If I can show you this statement that a student made about how confident they are in their freshman year of high school, or a student talking about their ability to design a business plan and then signing up on their own to a community college course, those are things that can't be measured in a math or an ELA test.
It's Taj.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, guys, gals, and non-binary pals to another episode of All the Above, the show that gives you an unstandardized take on education. I'm Jeffrey Garrett, one of your co-hosts, and I've been a middle and high school principal and a high school social studies teacher. And as always, I'm joined by...
What up, family? It's Manuel Rustin, your favorite teacher's favorite teacher. I'm a high school history teacher here in the Los Angeles area. And this here, of course, is All of the Above, your home for news and analysis of all matters pertaining to our world of education. Now, it's been a minute since we've had a full episode. Jeff was out gallivanting across the globe. And, you know, I had to pull a CEO move. I had to pull a Elon Musk and demand that he return to work immediately. So we are back with the full episode, which for those of you who are new to our show, our full episodes usually feature super dope guests. So that means we have a super dope guest today. We're going to take a look at multiple headlines, and we are available as a video if you are interested in seeing our beautiful faces on YouTube or in the Spotify podcast streaming app or whatever. So Jeff, you're back. We're back. Full episode. How's life? How's everything?
Oh, Manuel, life is good. What can I say? I spent 3 weeks in Thailand. I got to, travel halfway around the world and see amazing sights and taste amazing food and learn to make some of that amazing food and, ethically visit with elephants and relax on a tropical beach. And now I'm back, I will say, and still dealing with the most intense case of jet lag I've ever had in my life coming back to the United States. So these are my luxurious problems that I'm dealing with today, Manuel. But all is well here. Feeling just the rush, the post-vacation rush, I guess. And just settling back into some version of normal life here.
I love that for you. I love it. And we are here in late March, mid-March, depending on when this posts, mid-ish, late-ish March Madness time. And, we are the official podcast supporters of the UCLA Bruins. I'm not sure how your Dartmouth, I don't even know what your mascot is, but do they make the tournament?
The Big Green.
The Big Green. Okay.
Yeah.
So they might be in the tournament. We don't know. At the time of this recording, the bracket
to be honest,
hasn't been announced
I was off sports basically for the last 3 weeks, so I really don't know what's happening with the tournament. To be honest, I got to get back in because I love this time of year. Pretty sure that the Dartmouth Big Green will not be representing in the tournament this year, but I could be wrong. I just feel like I probably would have gotten an email about it, from the athletic department or something, hyping it up, or I would have seen it on Twitter or something. So I'm like, that probably means, not going to happen, because Dartmouth is not, historically a basketball powerhouse school. So.
Not like UCLA. Yeah, no, I get it. It's, most schools aren't quite the powerhouse that UCLA is. So, hopefully.
Okay.
just saying, just pointing that out. And, I imagine some of all of the above listeners and viewers are AOTA family. I imagine some folks are either approaching spring break or maybe on spring break or maybe just finished spring break, because I feel like spring breaks, there's a wide range in the school year calendar where those things take place. So shout out to everybody who is either enjoying or about to enjoy their spring break. But of course, the learning continues here on All of the Above. We keep it moving. So Jeff, we have a full episode today, jam-packed with a lot of dopeness. So what's on the agenda for this episode?
Well, Manuel, as usual, we got a good one for everybody. And today it is an exciting day because we are going to be bringing on just a really interesting guest to help us explore a topic that I think is one we haven't fully explored before on the show, which is always great to kind of continue expanding our conversation about education here. But we're going to take the day to sort of step out of the normal, kind of 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. lens on education and talk about extracurriculars. Specifically, going to be digging into some of the equity issues that we see in terms of access and opportunity for marginalized groups versus more wealthier and privileged groups, and thinking about what that gap is, what it means, how we should address it in our kind of modern educational landscape, especially in this context where we're coming out of the pandemic and, quote unquote, returning to normal, but seeing lots of needs from young people that after school programming, summer programming, etc., can help meet those needs for students. So we are excited today to be welcoming a fabulous guest, Dr. Charli Kemp, who leads a nonprofit here in Southern California, which also works in a couple of other cities across the country as well. She is a founder of a nonprofit, runs these extracurricular programs, someone who brings a wealth of experience and knowledge about this subject to the table. So it's going to be a fascinating conversation, folks. You definitely don't want to miss it.
Yeah, sounds dope. Dr. Charli Kemp in the building. But at first, we have our Do Now, where we take a look at recent headlines in the world of education. All right, stay tuned. All right, folks, now it's time for our Do Now. Let's take a look at some news in the world of education. Jeff, how are we going to do the Do Now today?
Well, Manuel, today we need everybody to put those thinking caps on. We got a pop quiz for everybody. Pop quiz time, people.
Pop quiz. Let's do it. It's been a minute. Let's see how our achievement is looking at this time of the school year. All right, Jeff, I have the first question. First question is, what season comes after winter?
Interesting. Well, I will tell you, Manuel, I just flew back to the state of California and flew down much of the coast of California and saw some season that looks to be both lush green and white snow at the same time on all of the mountains. So, and outside today, it's pouring rain here in California, which it's been doing like for months on end, it seems like. So, I mean, here, I'm going to say monsoon season. Well,
it feels like it, especially for our folks in Central and Northern California. Shout out to y'all. Stay safe and all that good stuff. But Jeff, you're incorrect. After winter comes college acceptances season. When the kids run to the mailbox to see if they got a big letter or a small letter, except they don't do that anymore. It's all electronic now.
Yeah. Nah, it's check the portal to see if you got a regular email or another regular email.
Yeah, and have the cameras set up so you could, video your reaction and post it to social media and all that. Yeah, times have changed, man. Times have changed. But I would have also accepted testing season because, of course, statewide testing is coming up as well after winter. But we're going to talk about college acceptances and a really interesting piece out of the LA Times by a high school senior who wrote this, who was an intern at the LA Times, about the stress of college applications and college acceptances and the complexity of dealing with that stress amid all the other stress factors coming out of the pandemic. So we got this story, like I said, from the LA Times. Shout out to Delilah Brummer, who is a high school senior, I think here locally in the San Fernando Valley. And she's writing for the LA Times. And this piece, which we'll link below this video, is called Amid Youth Mental Health Crisis, Teens Ask for a Kinder College Admissions Process. And she writes about high school seniors who have spent their winter months inundated with stress over college applications, rushing, in her words, to research financial aid, create pros and cons lists for colleges they want to attend, and brainstorm scholarship and admissions essays, all while trying to prevent the stressful shadow of college applications from blocking out the sun. Those are her words. very, very poignant there. Brummer points out that the pandemic has worsened the stress of college applications and the overall mental health of high school seniors. Now, U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy said in a statement that for many seniors, one important source of stress is the college admissions process, which they describe as being less about growth and exploration and more about checking boxes and fitting into a narrow definition of success. Seniors say the college application process harms their mental health in multiple ways. For one, it makes them feel as if they have to be perfect. One student profiled in Brummer's piece is senior Matthew Baker, who says, quote, "It's sort of similar to social media in a way. A problem that a lot of teens have is we start comparing. A lot of times I compare myself to other students in my grade who are also very, very talented and excellent. Sometimes I think they're way, way more qualified than I might be. That can be really mentally taxing." So, Jeff, it is that time of year where seniors await their notifications as to whether or not they got accepted to this college or that college. And college applications have always been a source of stress for sure. But amid the pandemic and everything going on in the world, it seems like the levels of stress experienced by high school seniors right now might be at an all-time high, perhaps. So what are your thoughts about this piece by this high school senior?
Yeah, so Manuel, I am I'm gonna assume that here on All the Above, this is a safe space for us to talk, and I'm gonna share with you a bit of like two different takes. I'm gonna share my raw emotional take in the moment when I read this piece, and then my more thoughtful, reasoned take after I had a chance to do a little reflecting. And honestly, Manuel, my first raw take was like, I'm not hearing anything described in this article that sounds like, particularly any type of stressful outlier for today's high school seniors versus any other generation's high school seniors. And I don't say that to say like, because I suffered back in the day, you should have to suffer today, youngster. Not with that in mind, but to say that like it is just a stressful experience to transition in life from childhood to adulthood, to go through a rigorous application process for college or a job or anything else, right? To think about moving your life from one location to another, to have to engage in the very adult world of taxes and financial aid forms and loans and these sorts of things. Like, it's stressful. There's not a version of that experience that's going to be without stress. And so part of me was like, I'm not seeing the story here, to be honest.
Old man Garrett.
Old man bitter Garrett was like, Get off my lawn, you lazy kid, to go walk uphill both ways to school, okay? Just like I did. So that was my honest gut reaction, I have to say. After I thought about it a little more, I said, okay, well, why is this young person writing this today? And what is perhaps different about the context around young people today that actually makes this interesting to note? And I think I've mentioned before on the show, Manuel, that I have a sibling who works in mental health services at the college level. And so we have conversations, fairly often about things that, she sees in her line of work and what I see or we see in K-12 work and some of the connections between those things. And as I kind of thought about it more through that lens, what stood out to me was not so much that like the response to this article needs to be, well, let's reduce the stress of transitioning from high school to college for young people, and more about what's the overall stress load the young people are experiencing right now. And given some of the effects of the more intensive years of the pandemic, where kids maybe were stunted in some ways, right? Like their social support networks were interrupted and harmed. They experienced fear and loss and illness and these sorts of things, financial instability in their families, etc. That like what used to be just the normal stress levels that maybe we were better situated to just kind of get through are becoming more debilitating, perhaps in this context. And so in that light, I was like, well, this is interesting perspective, especially coming from, the voice of a high school senior. So in that light, it did make me think, I think there's something here for us to think about. What are in the same way we think about the academic needs of of students post, quote unquote, post pandemic. What are these social, emotional, mental health needs at a particularly stressful developmental period in this, which we honestly aren't that good about as sort of a national society, right? Like really helping young people transition to maturity, right? Or to adulthood.
Right.
We don't necessarily have a lot of like rituals and things that help that happen successfully, but just sort of like navigate this complex process, and hopefully you have a counselor who can help you, kind of thing. So in that sense, I did appreciate what it was speaking to, even though honestly, my thought is like, yeah, this is a hard process, and many of the things in life that actually help you grow and evolve the most are hard. They're stressful. That can lead to positive outcomes in as much as it can lead to to negative outcomes as well. So that was kind of my take on it, Manuel. Bitter old man /
definitely
reasoned, reflective perspective, hopefully.
Yeah. No,
Yes.
I definitely hear that, and I appreciate that. And obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but yeah, I too was stressed, and it was difficult for me back then. So obviously, it's still going to be difficult for seniors now. But no, honestly, my first reading of this, I was thinking about the headline itself, which was asking for a more compassionate, I think was the word, or a kinder college admissions process. And I found it interesting that this piece here, which profiled several high school seniors, and I think gave a really humanizing glimpse at their view of things in their current situations. It wasn't really asking for us to change anything related to the process itself in terms of like the number of essays and this and that, whatever. It was really asking for the adults who are working in education and involved in these students' lives to be more compassionate and be more supportive. And she very importantly pointed out that a lot of students don't really have access to the knowledge of figuring out how to navigate any of this. And she pointed out that students from higher incomes, they oftentimes have families that could afford to pay for a college advisor to help them through this process. So a lot of other students have to just kind of figure it out on their own because there's not enough counselors, there's not enough actual advisors in the school campus to help students out. So really she's asking for us to do a better job at being able to support these students and make it so that they have some one-to-one, one-on-one like guidance and counseling as they navigate the application process and learn about what a strong application looks like and are walk through their options and all of that. So to me, that's something that we could definitely do a better job of. Just systemically, we could definitely do a better job if we are still expecting students to want to go to college and see the value of college. Then we as a school system certainly could do more to support them through that. But one thing that I think was missing from this piece, and this might not have been the place for it, I suppose, is just the question that I'm seeing a lot from young people of whether or not college even makes sense in the same way that it used to, like when you and I were applying to college. I think I've heard, various reports about more and more students being disinterested in trying to go to college because they see what's happening in the world, and they see that going to college does not automatically lead to better outcomes in terms of career and overall happiness. They see folks graduating college and still not able to afford to live in the city that they grew up in. They see all the calamity around them, and more young people are really questioning whether or not college is the answer. I think when I was in high school, it was really clear that like if you go to college, you have better career options, and better career options means better salary, and better salary means more likelihood to all of the things. And I think that straight linear thinking it probably wasn't true back then, but it's certainly not true now. So I definitely think there's space to discuss whether or not we as educators or we as a nation are properly having conversations with young people about why college even matters, and whether or not we really understand as adults the extent to which college produces the outcomes that we have always assumed it produces in terms of, all the overall benefits career-wise and learning-wise and just health-wise. I don't know. I think there's a big looming question mark about what college means now in this modern economy, in this modern environment where just the corporate world is chewing people up and spitting them out. Housing market is just a mess. Like, what does this college thing matter anymore for a young person who's looking at the world and seeing our institutions and everything just falling apart? I don't know. I think that's a part of the youth perspective that I would appreciate learning more about.
Yep, I definitely appreciate that perspective, Manuel, and that is another layer, right, of the kind of context around young people in this moment as we think about their perspective on the kind of social contract here, right? Like you play the game by the rules, you get a certain degree of benefit as a result, and they are looking at that and saying like, well, I could see too many examples of people who play the game by the rules and just wound up with a lot of debt and not a lot of economic mobility as
Right.
as was promised, right? Or I look around and I see, in order to pay rent or own a home in the city I live in, I would have to make so much that the profession or professions that I'm interested in will never allow me to have the quality of life that I would want to have, right? So what, in that context, what does that mean? And I think, that kind of, sort of soup within which young people are walking and the world that they're entering economically and socially, does raise some really powerful questions for us to grapple with about what's the message we're sending to people about the stakes of college and the sort of outcome that we're considering success, when we think about our K-12 system. So
Yeah.
that resonates with me for sure, man. And in as much as there is a little bit of me that still holds on to the bitter old man message, and it's like, just because things are hard doesn't mean they're bad, right? And our task is not to isolate young people from stress. Our task is to help young people navigate and do so with the right safety nets in place, stressful experiences, so they can learn and grow, right? And so I hope that we can, sort of keep that lens on this, as we think about how this process should evolve around young people nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. So shout out to Delilah Brummer, high school senior, headed to, I think it said Northwestern or Northeastern. I'm definitely mixing. She headed somewhere dope to major in journalism. Shout out to her for getting this piece in the LA Times. That's super dope. But Jeff, we do have another pop quiz question. So what do we got?
That we do. Well, Manuel, our next pop quiz question is, what is the least delicious kind of turnover? Manuel, what's the least delicious kind of turnover? I know there's, all in today's world of baking, there's like 1,000,001 kinds of turnovers, man. Well,
1,000,001 kinds of everything. You're right, because everybody's trying to have that super viral TikTok video of them making something that's like mind blowing and like, you should try this at home. But yeah, I don't know for least delicious. I'm a sweets person, so I don't think I've had a turnover that I didn't like. I do like apple turnover, tasty. So yeah.
Nice. Nothing wrong with that choice, Manuel. It's just wrong. So the least
wrong,
delicious kind of turnover we are talking about today, of course, here on All the Above, Manuel, is teacher turnover. And we have some fascinating news on that front to get into today. So let's dive into this story, folks. This story comes to us by Matt Barnum in Chalkbeat, and it's talking about teacher turnover hitting new highs across the United States. More teachers than usual exited the classroom after last school year, confirming long-standing fears that pandemic-era stresses would prompt an outflow of educators. This, according to a Chalkbeat analysis of data from 8 states. The turnover increases were not massive, but they were meaningful. In all cases, turnover was at its highest point in the last 5 years, typically around 2 percentage points greater than before the pandemic. The data suggests that spiking stress levels, student behavior challenges, and a harsh political spotlight have all taken their toll on many American teachers. In 2020, turnover actually dipped in many places across the country as the economy stalled. Then, however, in 2021, it ticked back up to a normal or slightly above average level. As this school year began, widespread reports of teacher shortages suggested that turnover had jumped more significantly. Data was hard to come by, though, as the federal government doesn't regularly track teacher quit rates. Many states don't either, with education officials in states like California saying that they didn't know how many teachers leave each year. But Chalkbeat was able to obtain the latest teacher turnover numbers from 8 states, including Hawaii, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Washington. These figures encompass turnover between the 21-22 year and this school year. While the 8 states where Chalkbeat obtained data may not be representative of the country as a whole, there are signs that higher attrition was widespread, including in a recent nationally representative survey from RAND, where school district leaders reported a 4 percentage point increase in teacher turnover. So, Manuel, we have been speaking about the sort of ongoing issue of teacher shortages across the country for years now on this show. And we, I think, often have been talking about it through the lens of, not enough people are going into the profession and how do we attract and retain teachers. And of course, that is important. And we're now also getting this, quote unquote, again, post-pandemic data showing that some of the fears that we had about there being an exodus from the profession are starting to manifest, at least. So looking at this data, thinking about this issue as we have been talking about it, Manuel, what's jumping out to you? What's important for us to dig into on this topic?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, it might be worthwhile for me to go ahead and let all of the above audience know that I will be leaving the classroom in June to enjoy my spring break, my summer break, I should say. And then I'll be back in the fall for my 20th year in the classroom because I do love it. But I absolutely understand why folks would leave the profession at this point. Yeah, the numbers don't seem to be, I guess, as big as we feared. But then again, the data is so murky. Like, we only have data from these few states, and I don't understand that part at all. Like, I don't understand how. I mean, here we are in California. Like, this is like for public school teachers in California. You could find you can find out so much about them just online. You can find out how what their salary looks like, how much benefits they get because they're public employees, credentialing info. You can find all that stuff. So how does the state not have a measure on how many folks are quitting the profession or leaving the profession at the end of each year? Like, to me, that seems silly. That seems like we should easily be able to track that. We also don't have like really clear data from the state about teacher demographics either. That's like updated and reliable. And so it's just. That bugs me. That bugs me that we're over here trying to find data, trying to measure just how bad this teacher turnover is right now. But from my perspective, I happen to be at a school site where thankfully we haven't really had much turnover in the last several years. And I don't know of anybody at the moment right now who's talking about leaving the profession from our school site that I know of. So I think it really might vary from site to site or district to district or region by region, especially for those teachers who are pointing at the political calamity and how difficult it is. This piece, they quoted a teacher who was talking about how she used to be able to teach Malcolm X in her, I think it was AP language class or something like that. And now like it's something that she can't really do anymore safely because parent complaints and this and that. So, I think it might vary a lot by region and by district. And it's unfortunate that we don't have that data, but it's also super clear, just like our story about seniors earlier in the Do Now, it's super clear that teachers are dealing with more stress perhaps than before. It's always been stressful. It's always been difficult. This profession has been difficult since I've entered it and since way before that for sure. But just something about these days just makes it feel even more stressful, more difficult. And we certainly need to keep paying attention. No matter what the actual numbers look like in this story here, I think it's clear that we are facing some really dangerous times with regards to making sure that we have a robust teaching force that is, for one, like physically present, having actual teachers in the building, but also like capable of dealing with all the ongoing challenges that we're facing with regards to how students are learning and technology and the interconnectedness and certain parents being ultra involved to a level that they weren't before, because now, you start entering one assignment into a grade book and everyone's getting notifications about that. And as a teacher, you're dealing with a lot more input and just a lot more of everything since we are also more connected than before. So yeah, man, it's troubling. It's very troubling. Shout out to everybody at my school site who's been doing the good work for a minute and who's hanging in there, because yeah, things are difficult for sure. But I just, mostly more than anything, I'm frustrated that we don't have clear numbers on this. And yeah, man, I'm also worried, but I'm worried about everything right now. Like everything seems to be trending in a pretty bad direction.
Yeah.
So there's that too.
Yeah, no, I think your point, Manuel, about the variance within the system is a really good one, because, coming at this conversation from, more of a district lens, I can tell you for sure, in the context that I am most familiar with, let's say, Los Angeles and New York City, that there are huge differences between school sites within those systems, right? So there are campuses that are hard to staff, or there are, grade levels or departments that are hard to staff, and there are others where there's a surplus of, of candidates, right? And so it is a more complex problem than just like, well, we just gotta like shove more people into the system and then it will, we'll solve this, right? So I think that is, that actually calls us to like explore the nature of the problem. And what stood out to me in this article, Manuel, and on the one level, I guess it's not really that shocking, because it's not necessarily the responsibility of the state to do this or the federal government to do this, right? Like hiring teachers is really a district prerogative in that sense, even though credentialing teachers and like controlling the supply of teachers and eligibility of teachers is a state function. That's in some ways where it ends for them, right? And so it did stand out to me that like we don't have this data, and we know that this is a huge problem that strikes at like a core institution of society. We should probably start gathering that data and like really doing something about it, right? And saying like, what is the health of the teaching profession in terms of retention, turnover, supply of new, folks coming into the profession, and, how people are sustaining themselves in it. And does that align with our needs as a society? And I think by all accounts that we have, Manuel, including the data that we see here, something is not right in the system, right? Like we are losing too many people. We are not attracting enough, high quality new candidates, and that this could lead to some very real challenges, and is already being felt in many ways across the country, with folks having no substitutes available, or having, long-term subs teaching, subjects that they're not credentialed or qualified to teach, or these sorts of things happening. And that is a very familiar experience happening in many places across the country. And so, the like canary is chirping in the mine shaft, or I guess that metaphor is the other way around. The canary has stopped chirping in the mine shaft, and that we should be treating this as a more serious issue, I think, than I at least see us doing nationally, right? Like as we think about education and how we're doing, this should be one of the top indicators of how we're doing, and I don't think we're seeing it that way right now. So, hopefully data like this, pieces like this are, creating greater momentum and political will around us actually doing that.
Yeah, hopefully. And hopefully we'll have some more data sometime soon, because I think you're right. That canary isn't as loud as it used to be, and somebody should look into that, because that's a problem. That's a problem. All right, folks. That's all the time we have for this Do Now, because we have a super dope guest awaiting us who will be helping us explore the equity issues related to extracurricular and after-school activities. And, the fight for educational justice has many layers. Some of it is the teaching profession and making sure we have highly qualified teachers and diverse teachers. And some of it is the college stuff that we talked about earlier. There's so many layers to this. So we're going to take a moment to discuss the after-school and extracurricular aspect of equity in the fight for educational justice. All right, so that's coming up next in our seminar. Stay tuned.
Hey folks, thanks so much for tuning in to All the Above. We really appreciate you. And as you know, All the Above is a small operation. It's just me and just Manuel, that's it. We have no sponsorships, which means we are totally dependent on our amazing audience to help support the show. So here's what you can do. Go to our website, which is aotashow.com/support. That's aotashow.com/support. There you can find links to everything you can do to support the show. You find all the links to every platform that we're on where you can like, subscribe, follow. Make sure you share our show with your whole network. Also, you can donate there. We are on Venmo. We're on Cash App, and most importantly, you can find the link to our Anchor page where you can become a monthly patron. Even a small donation once a month will make a huge difference in helping us continue to produce the show. Lastly, you can find there the link to get your flyest, best, latest, all the above show merch. Okay, all you got to do is go to aotashow.com/support. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of the show. All right, folks, welcome to today's seminar. Thanks so much for joining us today. And we are super excited to have with us today an amazing guest who's going to help us explore a topic that is, I think, a new topic for us in our seminars, at least. And that is exploring access, opportunity, and equity issues, not only in the kind of 8 to 3 school day that we often talk about on this show, but in the realm of extracurricular programming and opportunities for young people. Everyone out there, I think, can relate to the fact that learning experiences outside of school are so central to the lives of young folks. And we wanted to bring on someone who is an expert in this realm to help us kind of explore this discussion today. So we have with us the wonderful Dr. Charli Kemp. Dr. Kemp, welcome to All the Above.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
All right, folks, let me tell you a little bit more about our guest. Dr. Charli Kemp is a former middle school teacher turned Harvard PhD and nonprofit CEO who's focused on innovative and holistic solutions to helping children from underserved communities narrow the extracurricular resource and achievement gap. Dr. Kemp is the founder of Change the Tune, which provides radical and transformational learning experiences in partnership with communities here in Los Angeles, in Chicago, and the Boston area. Previously, Dr. Kemp worked for Green Dot Public Schools, where she developed the organization's first social-emotional learning framework. Before earning her MBA in 2014 from the University of Southern California, Dr. Kemp was a Teach for America Fellow and taught middle school mathematics and science in New York City for 5 years. As a teacher, she built strong communal relationships while helping her schools reimagine their extended learning programming. Dr. Kemp received her BA from Spelman College and recently finished her doctorate in education leadership at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Shout out to Hugsy. And I'm going to kick it over to Manuel for our first question today.
Yeah, extracurricular dopeness in the building. Thank you, Dr. Kemp, for joining us here on All of the Above. We are very much appreciative of you taking the time out to help us have this conversation and help us explore equity issues with regards to out-of-school education and extracurricular activities. And your organization points out that children from wealthier backgrounds by the sixth grade, they've already experienced 6,000 more hours of out-of-school education and extracurricular enrichment than students from lower income backgrounds. And we're wondering if we could start with just overall question of like in the complex tapestry of educational equity issues within the education system, why do you think it's important for us to address the equity issue inherent or here in place here with regards to out-of-school education and extracurricular enrichment?
Good question. Like you hear the number 6,000 hours, but I want to actually take a step back. One thing I think people don't realize, although parents realized in the pandemic, kids spend 80% of their waking hours outside of school. So that's like the majority of the time. And the upper income spend 9 times the amount of the low income on outside of school activities. So that's how we get to that 6,000 hours by the 6th grade. And so when we're thinking of, I was a math teacher, by the way, you guys talked about this. And so I'm into the numbers. When we're thinking about this, average school year is 1,500 hours. So 6,000 hours is basically 4 school years of difference when we're talking about learning. And so what we understand is the wealthy know that learning doesn't stop at 3, it doesn't stop at June. And so it's really critical for us to think beyond the narrow lens of this 20% education window and like think that learning needs to happen all the time, everywhere, in multiple ways. I think the other big piece, to make it very plain, we say, oh, we should fix schools, but you could make every school perfect 8 to 3, September to June, and you wouldn't touch this gap. And if you just let that sink right there, then and it only grows after the 6th grade. And so for me, getting us to think differently. And then one more layer, I'll level into this. We know that our education system is quite racist, and non-white school districts get about $2,200 less per pupil. The average after-school program is $2,500. The average summer camp, if you're going to do 4 weeks, is about $1,000 to $1,200. So when we're talking about these gaps, it's a huge equity issue. And also, if we really want to think about building a learning system that serves all, we have to think about beyond 8 to 3 and September to June.
Yeah, it's such powerful data that you're sharing with us there, Dr. Kemp. And I think we often just don't think about this, this side of the equity equation when we're thinking about education. It's confined, as you said, to that 20% so much of the time, right? Or maybe the 20% plus sports or something of that nature, but really not necessarily thinking about this broad swath of learning experiences outside of the conventional school day that, is so different between kids and families with financial means and, community privilege, and those who, as you said, in our so eloquently in our quite racist system, do not have that privilege, right? So appreciate you, speaking so powerfully on that. I do, of course, wonder, and I think we wonder, what someone like you would say about how we address this, right? What should we be doing at scale to address this equity gap that you've noted? And of course, you as the founder of a nonprofit that provides extracurricular programming and services to young people. If you could tell us a bit about what your organization is doing to address this locally and nationally as well.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. To answer the question, what should we be doing at scale starting first? I think policy, full stop. The amount of money, if you look at where federal and state funds go, I would say 90% of it goes to the school day and less than 10% goes to the after school extended learning space. But we just talked about this 20% versus 80% time in this big gap. And so in a state like California, right now we're a little flush with cash, but people aren't always quick to spend it because they're afraid of this fiscal cliff. But we should be doubling down and spending it in these extended learning spaces and giving experiences to show the power behind it. I think, and also thinking from a policy level, how do we create sustained policies where we can fund every child to have an after school opportunity, Saturday opportunities, summer opportunities, and we'll get more into the challenge because it's not just the number of hours, but then there's also how we structure education in general is highly problematic, which is why I focus a lot on the after school space. I think the other piece of this is business. I went to business school, as you mentioned. And one of the things I've heard getting into business school and in these places and spaces is there's not enough people in the pipeline, but you're not designing an education system for people to be in the pipeline. So imagine every Fortune 500 company took 5% of their profits and invested it in an extended learning program that cultivated the 21st century skills that kids would need to be able to be successful in their workspace in underserved BIPOC communities. And so I think businesses should be thinking about how do we partner with schools, districts, learning systems to design learning spaces for our youth that prepare them and prepare us for the 21st century. We know we have a huge STEM gap. Every STEM company that's making all this money should be investing right now in the education space so that we can close this gap. And then I think the other piece for education systems to think about that we talk a lot about is Education operates in silos, math over here, science over here, wellness is over here. But instead, we should be partnering with the community and different partners to come in to create learning experiences where kids have the opportunity to see non-traditional and traditional leaders who look like them and have experiences that expose them to different careers that they could do. So for example, and bringing it to change the tune, that's basically what we do. So we do a few things. One, we create and lead programs that students love with students and communities. It's about talking to them first, figuring out what they like, and then from there, being able to design a program that they want to participate in where they can learn, grow, and achieve. So that looks like in our current after school program, Mondays, we do gardening and yoga. Wednesdays, they're doing graphic design and social justice business plans where they're making t-shirt businesses. And Thursdays, they're doing food justice and culinary arts and cooking using the gardening food. And so these are things kids said that they wanted to do, and we've created it, and it's a learning experience. They're learning how to become agents of change in their community. And so part one is we do direct service programming, but then our big piece is teaching others to create programs. And so we consult with quite a few districts and quite a few organizations on how do you build that program? How do you start first with the community's voice and understand what's needed? And then how do you design with an equity lens what a program, what an experience can look like? And then the third piece is how do we mobilize this investment piece? How are we bringing in businesses, funding opportunities? And so I've given you a whole monologue. One last thing I'll say, like scale wise, if you have, if you're a Starbucks drinker, you could invest, let's say, $100 a month and pay for a kid's summer camp. Like I would be looking at the Boys and Girls Club or Change the Tune or a YMCA and donating because $100 a month will cover summer camp for a kid. And so if you have any kind of discretionary income that you want to be intentional with and you have your kids in 5 activities, maybe just sponsor one activity for one child and where would we all be? And so I think those are some systemic things we could do.
Nice. I appreciate that. And really, I'm interested in, I've been at a few different school sites across my 19 years in the profession. And there's been various after school programs and activities happening. And I think, a lot of large urban districts like here in Los Angeles, there's already sort of an infrastructure in place. Los Angeles has the Beyond the Bell. Wondering what your thoughts are about the existing landscape of after school and or out of school and extracurricular enrichment programs, and like, what could be done to help make sure that those programs are having the impact that we hope they're having when it comes to closing these equity gaps, albeit whether by income or by race?
I think shifting the mindset and the lens that after school matters. There's an organization called After School Matters, but after school is important. We've used this lens where, and what it's important for, I think is really critical. We've used this lens that, we create a safe space for kids. That's great. That's nice. But if I'm a wealthy parent, I'm investing in my kid becoming a leader. I'm making sure they're cultivating skills and developing skills. And so, Beyond the Bell, I'll name at one of the schools we partner with, they're quite stretched. It's like a 50-2 ratio at this school. The kids can play basketball or do homework, but who wants to do that when they can just run around? And there isn't a lot of set designed programming. And so I think there's an opportunity for teachers to partner with. One of the things we do is we like to hire teachers if they have the capacity to work with us to help design and bridge, because there's lessons for teachers to learn in project-based learning with us. And there's also structures and systems that teachers are well aware of that can flow into the after-school space to help facilitate that. And so I think what we see in a lot of after-school spaces is a lack of structure, a lack of resources, and I would say, unfortunately, a lack of intentionality. It's very much, let's provide a safe space, let's provide extracurricular enrichment activities. But what if I was in a session actually at Hugsy yesterday, and this professor was talking about, which we use the Sustainable Development Goals with our youth. What if all curriculum was designed around the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, where kids are thinking about how do we eliminate poverty? How do we eliminate hunger? How do we reduce inequalities? And that's what we build curriculum around in and out of the school day. And so I think after school has this place where we can create it in a much more canvas-like experience, but I think we definitely need to give them some supports in terms of resources so that we can be more intentional.
Wow, what's really resonating with me, Dr. Kemp, as you're talking there is, this idea of sort of what does success look like as we think about outcomes for our system of education. And very often when we think about success in education, we think about the sort of hard, publicly available metrics, right? Graduation rate, test scores, college applications and acceptances, and obviously those things have their own importance. But speaking to maybe this more sort of qualitative side of things, or this perspective on like what are the things that really matter to communities, to families, to kids about their child's experience, about their child's growth and development, about the needs of the community. I guess I'm seeing a lot of resonance between what you're saying and some questions we've raised before on the show about is it time to revisit some of what we mean when we say when we evaluate success in our educational system. So just wanted to kind of call that out, and you're pushing my thinking a bit as well about maybe not just limiting that conversation to the confines of the traditional school day as well. But I did want to move on to our next question for you, Dr. Kemp, which is you've spoken before about the multi-pronged approach that Change the Tune uses, which includes an approach to social emotional learning as part of the kind of learning and experience model in the work that you do. And so, one, I'm curious to learn a bit about why you do that and what that looks like and why it's so important. And then two, we are now in this world in which things like social emotional learning have become sort of lightning rods for the right wing, and really are under attack as a sort of quote unquote woke agenda. So also would love to hear you speak a little bit about how you would respond to some of those types of criticisms which educators across the country are now facing.
Yeah, I think I want to tap on you didn't ask the question, but like this piece around reevaluating our metrics. Honestly, like if you ask me and Change the Tune about math and English scores of our kids after I don't care. That's not going to tell you anything about who our kids are going to be. But if I can show you this statement that a student made about how confident they are in their freshman year of high school, or a student talking about their ability to design a business plan and then signing up on their own to a community college course, those are things that can't be measured in a math or an ELA test. And so I definitely think, part of the brokenness of our system is being held accountable to standards that we've never agreed to and weren't designed for us. And so really rethinking that matters, which then leads me to social emotional learning. I think, I saw this meme, and I hope this is appropriate, but it was like a reporter asking someone, they had a Make America Great Again hat on. And they were like, so you don't agree that we should have CRT in schools? And they were like, no, we shouldn't. I don't know why they're trying to bring that into schools. And so then the reporter was like, well, what is CRT? And the person paused and thought. It was a Caucasian male. And he said, I don't know. So, a lot of people don't even know what social emotional learning is. And so I want to just take a moment and step back. Social emotional learning is basically like learning how to be a good human being, period. So my first question I would ask these individuals is, would you want would you want our youth to learn how to become good human beings? And so then somebody might say, what's entailed in learning how to become a good human being? Communication skills, critical thinking skills, 21st century learning skills. And one of the pieces that is in there is self-awareness, social awareness, cultural competence. These are the elements of social emotional learning. And so if you want to navigate any space from the boardroom to Harvard to even the hood, so to speak, you need to have these skills. These are skills that will take you far in life, more than knowing how to do the quadratic equation or write a perfect grammatically correct sentence. And so for me, I would try to engage in a dialogue with some of these leaders to understand, like, what do you think is best for youth? Because what I really think it comes down to, I was doing a little bit of research, like, what are these folks talking about? Because they're connecting it to LGBTQIA plus and CRT, because part of it goes back to this critical thinking skills piece. I'm imagining both of you have maybe read Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And our education system has been designed where we just are cogs in a wheel and we just do. We're not supposed to be critical thinkers that question things. So now the kids are coming home questioning parents because they've been taught agency with social emotional learning. Then we want to connect the two because it's like, uh-oh, we're creating thinkers here. But like, do we really want robots? Because I don't think anyone just wants a robot. And so it's some questions around, what do we think youth should be learning? How should they be learning? What does it look like to create a space and place where all youth can be leaders and live in their truths, their gifts, and their joys? And so that's what social emotional learning is about. Like, what does it look like now that we're coming out of a pandemic to be able to ground yourself in mindfulness and like process your feelings when there's a difficult moment, or recognize how to talk through somebody who's not treating you well? And so, I think I would have a lot of questions for them to try to understand where they're coming from, because I would want to make sure they fully understand the process of SEL so that we could hopefully, education is super political. And right now we're seeing that play out. And it can be super harmful about the ways in which we're going. And so if we could help some people to see that, like, this isn't the way that we want to go, that would be my goal.
Yeah, you're definitely speaking to my soul, I think, there, yeah. Dr. Kemp, or to our soul here. I do want to maybe just play a little bit of devil's advocate for a moment and hear your thoughts on this, because I can see some folks, in the schools that I've worked in over the years who would not even coming from just a sort of right-wing, harmful perspective, like maybe the individual you were mentioning in that video earlier, but coming from a place of like, hey, we're in a tough situation. Education is a pathway out for my child. I want my child to, get the great test scores. That's going to open doors for them so that they can access, colleges and whatever else they need in order to get ahead in this, in this oppressive society. So folks who are coming maybe more from that perspective, it might be saying, you know what, I want my child to just learn, history, to learn math, to learn English, and in their after school programs, if they're going to learn gardening, great. I want them to learn gardening, but what does, social emotional learning have to do with, with my child learning what I need them to learn so they can get where they need to get in an unfair society? So how would you speak to someone who's coming to the table with those kinds of questions?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things. I have a noticing that a lot of people don't like social emotional learning in our communities because it's uncomfortable and they are not good at some of the skills that are being presented. So I might try to tease some of that out to say, well, like, what part of social emotional learning do you think is not important? Because, one of the things is, if you want your kid to be good at math and get good math grades, they need to be able to communicate when they're doing that math work. Or if they have anxiety on a math test and they've learned how to breathe beforehand and like take a moment and pause and realize that they could develop some resilience, and like, even if they think they're not good at something, but they want to become good at it. These are SEL skills. Like, SEL is not this separate subject and I think that is part of the brokenness. Is there's some bad SEL curriculums I want to name out there that suffer from a lot of whiteness and like a lot of like, let me put you in this box and you become this stereotyped person that no, it doesn't feel authentic to us. But what I would ask is, do you believe in soft skills? Do you think that you need to, your student is going to need to learn how to navigate difficult situations? Do you think they'll need to know how to have a level of social awareness when they get to college, before they get to college? They're going to have to learn how, like, one of the things about SEL that's most powerful is learning how to work in groups. I'd ask, do you work at a group in your office? And, some parents are like, well, it's my job to teach these skills. And I would offer that it's the community's job. it really does take a village to raise a child, and we don't know what we don't know. And so what does it look like to partner, to think? SEL is about thinking holistically about your child to make sure that they have their spirit fed, their non-cognitive skills fed. Like when we think about really how do you build relationships? You can have perfect test scores, but like if you have no like gardening or anything extracurricular, you're not likely to get into the school that you want to get into. And these SEL skills are helping students to learn how to socialize with one another. And so it's not I think sometimes there's a scarcity mindset, like we only got time to do these math problems. No, we need to learn how time management is another part of this here. Again, how do we become good people who are thinking holistically to get it all done? So I think that would be the offering for them.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Spelman, USC, Harvard, out here in these streets, speaking the truth and fighting the good fight. Dr. Kemp, how do folks get in contact with you, especially folks who might be interested in trying to do better by their own extracurricular or out of school programming in their districts? You mentioned something about how your organization also helps districts design their own programming with community input. So how do folks find you?
I'm gonna give you all of the things. One, my email is Charli Kemp at ChangeTune. There's no just changetune.org. And notice on my name, it's CharliKemp. So no E on the Charlie either. So Charli Kemp at changetune.org. Our website is changethetune.org. Our Instagram is at Change the Tune. Our Facebook is at Change the Tune. So LinkedIn, like hit me up. I'm open. I'm about the community and us doing it together. So however we get it done, we get it done. So please reach out. But Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, email, hit me up.
Yeah. All of the things. And of course, folks will have links beneath this video, beneath this podcast for more information and for helping y'all get in contact. So Dr. Kemp, we very much appreciate you taking the time out to be here on all of the above. Very much enjoyed that conversation. And folks, up next, of course, is our Class Dismissed, where we like to give love to folks doing wonderful things out here in the world of education. So stay tuned.
All right, folks, welcome to today's Class Dismissed, and it's the time in the episode where we like to pause for a moment and give some flowers to folks out there in the world of education, just doing great, powerful, inspirational work. Manuel, who we got today?
Yeah, well, Jeff, we have a story out of Florida, which is almost always good news, right? When there's an education story coming out of Florida.
Right.
Yeah, so this one stood out to us because it is good news in a way, and with all that's happening across the nation, but it seems like some folks in Florida are trying to become the leaders of all this, all these attacks on all things good in education. So a lot of news has been coming out that it hasn't been great, but in this case, it's important to remember that students aren't just sitting back, just like not caring or not acting. So this is a story that we came across thanks to All Things Considered on NPR. And as a quick little story, but it's a little glimpse into the fact that students are becoming active participants in the resistance to these attacks on our curriculum and these attacks on our humanity and all of these things. So we want to shout out these students in Florida. Specifically, this is a school district in the Tampa area that removed Toni Morrison's Bluest Eye because some parent was upset about some of the things in the novel and took to YouTube and made a YouTube video attacking the novel and attacking the fact that students were being exposed to this Toni Morrison work. So the school district, like a lot of districts across Florida, out of abundance of caution or whatever you want to call it, went ahead and took the book out because, all of these laws and all this legislation in Florida allowing them to go ahead and ban books and allowing them to go ahead and take down stuff after parent complaints, even when those complaints are baseless. So in the story, which we'll link below this video, this episode, students took to the school board and made their voices heard and are rightfully criticizing the fact that this parent put up a YouTube video, but didn't show up to the school board meeting to talk about it, and rightfully pointing out that a lot of these attacks on their curriculum, on their education, are coming from bad actors who are operating in bad faith. And shout out to these students for making sure that they're showing up to these school board meetings, and the school board alleges that they are temporarily looking into it, and that this isn't a permanent decision to not have the bluest eye there. But I think it just reminds us, hopefully, that students have a big role to play in these attacks on our education system, and students aren't just sitting back not knowing or not caring about what's happening. So I do think we'll see many, many more students go to their board meetings and air their grievances there, and also take to social media to point out what's happening, because what's happening is clearly dangerous. One of the students profiled in the story talked about just how fascist this is. Like, this is the stuff of a dystopian future where, like, we're literally banning books, which is we should be in the streets about this, man. Like, this is just crazy. Like, when you step back and think about it, this is just wild. This is just wild. So shout out to these students for doing better than many of these adults out here. So yeah, again, we'll link the story below so you can get the more specific details about it. But, we just wanted to shout out every student that's out there fighting the good fight for the sake of our nation, really. So yeah.
Yes, I will fully 100% echo that, Manuel. And honestly, especially in a state like Florida, where the stakes are so high for educators and really anyone for speaking out in a very dangerous political environment. These are, the right-wing folks in Florida, these white supremacist folks in Florida are the most dangerous people in our country, right? In terms of their willingness to weaponize the powers of government against whole communities of people, and to do things that history teaches us, lead to very, very dangerous, problematic conditions. So shout out to them for the courage, for the follow through it takes to actually, stand up for what's right in these kinds of situations. And folks, little plug for our next full episode, which will be coming your way in just a couple weeks. We are, if all goes well, don't want to jinx it beforehand, but going to be having on for our 100th episode, full episode of All of the Above, an amazing educator from the state of Florida to talk more deeply about what is happening on the ground there with educators in what now is among the most repressive states in the country in terms of suppressing educator, freedom, autonomy, free speech, and any discussion of accurate history or, quote unquote controversial issues. So we plan to go deep on what's happening on these educational streets in Florida. So please stick with us, folks. And with that in mind, you can listen, watch, tune into All the Above all the time. All you got to do is go to our website. It's AOTAshow.com. There you can find the links to all of our content. We stream on all the podcast apps. You can get us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any app that you're using to listen. And of course, you can find our video episodes also on YouTube. So check us out, folks. It's AOTAshow.com. That's AOTAshow.com. Get links to all our content there. And you can figure out how to support the show at AOTAshow.com/support. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.